Critics call it a form of modern-day slavery. California prison inmates doing construction work, computer coding, or working in hospice care, among other jobs. Well, this week in California, the effort to end what critics are calling forced labor is one step closer to being on the November ballot. On Tuesday, it passed out of a key committee. The End Slavery in California Act, or ACA 8, proposes an amendment to the state's constitution in regards to its language on slavery. Currently, Article 1, Section 6 of the state constitution states slavery is prohibited. Involuntary servitude is prohibited except to punish crime. The proposed amendment would simply read, slavery in any form is prohibited. If passed, California would join 34 other states which already removed that language from their constitutions, including Alabama, Oregon, Tennessee, and Vermont, which did so in 2022. The California Department of Corrections says every job is dignified, and they strive to provide job opportunities and training similar to those outside of prison. Let me bring in now Dorsey Nunn. He is a former executive director of legal services for prisoners with children, a formerly incarcerated person himself, and author of What Kind of Bird Can't Fly, a memoir of resilience and resurrection. Dorsey, great to see you.
It's great to be seen.
So what change would come to California prisons if voters endorse this change?
Probably the notion that people regarding labor can make can actually refuse to work or not refuse to work, because we think that involuntary servitude is another form of slavery. So I think that we should be given some options and some choices. In the event that somebody decides to go do an educational pursuit, should they actually pursue their rehabilitation as opposed to being forced to work? Those are questions that's clearly on the board.
And you come at this in a very personal way because you spent 10 years at San Quentin State Prison. I mean, tell us about your experience working while incarcerated.
Working while incarcerated, first of all, I never made any more than $32 a month for a 40-hour work week. In addition to that, in certain times that I was working like in the detergent plant, I think the chemicals that we were mixing was extremely dangerous chemicals, and I didn't have the equipment to actually protect myself. In the event that I would have refused to actually work, I think that they could have effectively taken me back to the board and actually continued my life sentence. I think that they could have excluded me from contact visits during the canteen and doing a number of other things. As a result of me going to prison, I also was being given an education on the yard by other incarcerated people that taught me how to read, that actually taught me how to reason. And I think that as a result of that education that I got on the yard, and people actually training me or actually educating me, I think that it actually improved the quality of my life when I got out. Not only did it improve the quality of my life, it improved the quality of my kids' life and my community life. So it's like the choice of just making detergent necessarily didn't do anything for me. I wasn't going to be a detergent maker. I wasn't going to be a construction worker. It also enabled me to actually go to college and do a number of other things because I was prepped in a different way of where I was going with my life and how I want to engage. At a certain point, I promised to other people who had taught me how to read to return to the community asset instead of a liability, and I think that I've done that. So in terms of actually being, we celebrate this month in Juneteenth. I'm in the middle of Juneteenth right now, and I'm going to go out and enjoy barbecue. But to the most part, I think that the narrative around the question of punishment is so potent. It doesn't allow people to actually see the practice of slavery that's under their nose. I think between 1865 and now, we probably enslaved millions of people a little bit at a time, but nobody actually called it a slavery. In reality, labor through force and fear and without consent is slavery. And if you're not paying anybody, it's slavery. So those are the things that I think that I'm fighting for. And I'm fighting to change the Constitution because I want to prohibit the practice of involuntary servitude that people are saying that it's something different than slavery. So let's just call it out. Let's call it prohibit involuntary servitude and call it out as slavery or point blank. And I think that people should consent to the question of labor.
The bill's author, Assemblywoman Lori Wilson, applauded the movement this week, calling it a critical moment in our pursuit of justice and human dignity. I was quoting her, but even some state Democrats are still not on board. Democratic Senator Steve Glazer told CNN affiliate KGO this week that the bill might undermine certain in-prison services, including food and janitorial services that rely on inmates. The California Department of Corrections said this, that they don't comment on proposed legislation. So what's your response to what Glazer had to say?
My response is this. 5% of the world population is holding 25% of the prison population. That wouldn't even be possible without necessarily forcing the labor. So the question still boils down that when you get really down to it, it ain't about, whether or not we're going to advance the notion of rehabilitation or we're going to advance the notion of public safety. What it gets down to is, are we going to advance the notion of being able to do this real terrible practice of slavery as being cost effective? So at a certain point, we probably need to have inside the United States, if a country is founded on the backs of slaves, and we say that we are not practicing slavery, should we actually not practice slavery? And prior to 1865, California had it and impacted it probably a little bit earlier in 1849. So it's like, it came years earlier, and probably Vermont had some clause in probably 1877, and they still is holding on to the vestiges of slavery.
A few more hurdles before a decision is made as to whether California voters will make the decision about changing this Constitution.
We're going to, like the shirt that I'm wearing right now, I'm having people show up on the 18th when it goes to the election committee wearing these shirts. They're going to be wearing these shirts throughout Juneteenth. They're going to be wearing these shirts when they show up in terms of appropriation on 24. So a number of us who have went through the system, we recognize that they have been practicing slavery. Everybody else think that it's just a simple form of punishment. So you need to ask the question, are you willing to actually give up the notion of brutally subjecting people to forced labor, or are you actually defining punishment as being sentenced to prison in the time that we spend in prison? Then do something else with the population that's there, because none of the jobs that you gave me and forced me to work on, it didn't give me the opportunity to feed my family when I got out. It didn't give me the opportunity to feed my family over the period of time. And it didn't necessarily provide you greater public safety, because the first thing that we need to do is remove desperation and no choices off the board. Slavery give labor a bad name.
Dorsey, Nunn, I appreciate your point of view, really. I mean, a pivotal week, potentially, and beyond. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to speak on the question of how they exploited me and they exploiting millions of other people.
Absolutely love hearing your point of view. Thank you so much.
All right.